he has a plan, she has a plan, and you get to pay for it regardless.
The best way to get someone motivated is to stand for something strongly, deeply, passionately.
Subscribe to Disenthrall.
Do as you're told.
Greetings, Caravanners. Welcome back to Disenthrall. I will be Patrick Smith. We're going to continue. It's not really a continuation because over on Anarchast, we just did a very nice interview with these two lovely individuals. This is Chris Chew. I call him Chewy. And this is Morgan, his girlfriend. They are nomads. And we did a very cool talk where we found out about their lives, how they became I almost said Anarchasts over on Anarchast. No, how they became anarchists, how they met, how they transitioned from maybe a more quote-unquote normal life to the nomad style. So I would suggest if you're interested in hearing more about their lives and the people here, go check out that interview. Link in the description to go over to Anarchast for that. We are here at Floatfest, day 473. No, actually, it's like day 7. How long have we been here? 5? Okay. It's the longest camping trip I've ever been on. We got here a day early though, and we are just talking to all the awesome people that are showing up here. And so today, yesterday we talked to them about their who they are and their story. Now I would like to go through their activism, and that's a fit for this Disenthrall channel, probably more so than Anarchast. So what they did was they went and joined the caravans, the trucker caravans that are going on in the United States. And they tried to wake some people up and change some hearts and minds. So I want to get into that story with them, but let's start at the beginning, as all stories should, right? So walk us through how you decided or thought about or came to the conclusion that you guys were going to go do that.
Sure, yeah. Well, so we've been going back and forth between the Ozarks and Dallas for the last few months, and there was a Canadian trucker who had quit his job and moved down to the United States without a green card to escape the vaccine mandates, and he had done that a week before all the protests actually kicked off. And so we learned about this from him when we were going to the Greater Reset watch parties. He went with us. We let him go along with us, and it was really kind of interesting to see how much of an impact those trucker protests were having. Now, fast forward, in the United States, there have been several trucker convoys that are kicking off with the objective of primarily ending the Emergency Powers Act, which is one of the acts that has enabled a lot of the overreach and constitutional violations that we have seen with regard to COVID-19, whatever you want to call that. So we were aware of what was going on there, and we were aware of the American convoys, and we were not able to figure out exactly how we're going to get to Canada over the border for that convoy. But when we heard about the American one coming through from another group in the Voluntarist Network in the Ozarks, we decided we'd get on and just see what it was all about. Certainly, individuals with power over other individuals is something that we don't like to see. And so we knew that there would be a lot of common ground that we could establish with the people in this protest, in this convoy. So we were in the Ozarks. We got in on a convoy that left out of California, and we got in Big Cabin, Oklahoma. And it was interesting. We were only going to be there for about 1, maybe 2 nights and then go back to Dallas. We didn't want to go for too long, but we wanted to see what it was like to go with one of these convoys. And we wound up staying with them for around 45 days is what it turned into. We just saw the amazing opportunity that it gave us, because we were going more as sort of like missionaries for voluntarism, that sort of thing, because that's really where our passion's at. And that's
why did you decide to go?
I decided I should be the one to talk. So I was telling everybody in Dallas, like, oh, I'm gonna maybe I should go on the trucker convoy. And this was before we knew there's an American one. I was like, maybe I should go up to Canada. I didn't know that there were protests that were not Antifa or on the kind of one side or the other of the political spectrum. It seemed like the truckers, and after talking to our friend, he also explained that they were just kind of normal people, and I got kind of excited about that, and about they were just really only focusing on freedom. So I just wanted to be around them. I didn't think that it was effective necessarily, whatever they were doing, but I just thought, well, if my goal is to network and talk to people, understand what other people have thought and are doing, and I had never gotten into direct action. I didn't even really know what that was, and then our friend in Fayetteville was like, well, this is what they're doing, and I really didn't have enough time to look into it. But when we found out that the convoy had actually left early, we were going to go out to California and join it there, but they were already in Oklahoma, and we just kind of threw everything together in the car and was like, well, let's just see. And after one night, we can talk a little bit more. That first day really did change our mind. We got to have several important conversations with truckers, a few police officers, a politician who was traveling with the convoy, as well as a group of people who are actually a lot more on our level, and they were open to what we were saying. And so I said, the farther we go, the more people are going to join, and it seemed very lucrative for spreading the voluntarist ideology.
I wanted to talk about this with you guys because I think you went to the protest with the right mindset. I often say that, and I really believe this, that protests are almost always worse than useless, meaning they actually make things worse. And here's how. Because, first of all, people think that they have an effect on the government and on their freedom. They don't. The government loves it when you protest because you're burning off your useful energy. You're taking your free time and you're just burning it off, yelling rah, 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 usually at a government building somewhere. They don't care if you yell at their buildings. Yeah. That doesn't change anything. And so that's why they're worse than useless, because they're wasting that. Just like the Libertarian Party, I see as like a honeypot for that, right? It sucks people in. They think they're doing something useful. They think they're causing change, but all they're doing is just wasting their free time before they go back to work. And I'm glad that you guys didn't go there to join the protests, to yell at buildings and drive trucks around and stuff. You went there to reach the people that saw themselves as in a crisis situation, which is when people are more open to being reached with new ideas. So, and did you say missionaries? Is that what you said?
Well, it's not the best term. I think someone had told us a better term, it's that general idea of just spreading a particular message in a place that maybe it's not been heard before. And one of the really cool things about this convoy, I think the reason that we stayed on is when we got on they met in Veneta and then Big Cabin, Oklahoma. They're really close to each other. But we had seen, when we got there immediately, we were like, wow, okay, there's tons of food being just poured in at us. And there's cars from local places. There's big trucks just dropping off tons and tons of food they're supporting. When you open up the food packets, you see hand-written letters from little kids and things that say, thank you so much, you're our last hope for freedom, blah, 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 we're praying for you. And it breaks my heart to see it.
It's cute, but it's also enraging. Because these people think that they're doing something, efficacious. Mm-hmm. Sorry. And like Murdoch was ranting about a couple nights ago when you guys got here, these people, complied for a year and a half with all this nonsense. And it's like now, okay, some line got crossed and now they're going to complain by yelling at buildings. It's like, come on, guys.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of noticed that as well. And I'm not sure if their exact mission changed as I think it was the State of the Union happened and maybe some announcement was made that they were going to drop mandates. I can't remember exactly because I was camping out there for so long, but it had changed eventually to trying to end the Emergency Powers Act, which apparently is what's enabling a lot of the tyranny that we see. So, and that was fine too. The cool opportunity with this particular thing, though, is we're already nomadic, and this is by nature a nomadic event, and they're traveling from city to city to city, anywhere that would accept them. There were some cities where the police said, "You're not allowed to come in here. We won't let you come in here," because the convoy was somewhere like 30 to 60 miles long, just a massive convoy of 18-wheelers and trucks. And what was interesting was we got out on the road, and it was a lot of churches and communities, and the people that were coming out there, these are people, farmers and, the backcountry people that I doubt that they watch your show, but they're great people. They're still good people. They haven't heard about voluntarism. A lot of them haven't. Most of them haven't. And this event in particular, we were able to go from city to city, and we were stopping in small towns, and we were getting thousands of people coming in small towns, like harder to reach areas. And they were all coming in, and they were in here for their own purpose. They wanted freedom, and they saw there was a lot of different angles people had. They saw the government as illegitimate due to the voting thing, or we were trying to show them how all voting is a fraud because it attempts to manufacture consent where it doesn't exist and things like that. But it's really easy to talk about voluntarism with these people because all you have to do is find out what are the things that are being done to these people that they don't want done to themselves. And then you just tell them, okay, this shouldn't be done to you, first and foremost because you own yourself, not Joe Biden. A lot of people were, the fuck Joe Biden, and they had flags like that up. And it's like, yeah, Joe Biden doesn't own you, right? And they totally agreed with it, and it sunk in the whole way through. And then we just had to say, we don't like any politicians. A lot of people there liked Trump, and they said he's not a politician. Well, he ran for president and he got the office,
Pretty sure that makes him a politician.
That makes him a politician.
Yeah.
But, that's, wherever they are, it was a really interesting opportunity to meet with these people because...
he may have been a huge politician. I'm terrible at the Trump accent.
Well, yeah, a huge politician. But it's just it was so cool to go from one town to another. And unlike a lot of the activism that I've seen on YouTube and things where people are going into a protest and they're trying to talk and interview and figure it out, the people who were coming to that city wanted to hear, what are we here for? Because we're the people who are actually going with the convoy. Why are we here? And so we got to tell them, we have people give us money. At times, we never ask for money. We don't need money. We're not asking for anything from the convoy. We have people give us money and always smiles, and they loved the message of voluntarism. They hadn't heard it before. I didn't use the word anarchy right away.
Well, and I think this ended up maybe what you just alluded to doing may have been a source of conflict for you later on that we can get to, where you're saying that we are here with a message of voluntarism when that's certainly not the average message coming from the people in the convoy, right? And so that may have made them feel like you were, that probably made them feel like they were being misrepresented by your presence in some way. But, yeah. We can get to that at whatever appropriate point in the story you'd like to. So I want to kind of go slow enough that we don't miss any of the good parts of the story. So when you guys first arrived, what were your first impressions, and how were you received?
We were received really well. When we first arrived, we got out of the... I'll show you the sign that I had. We got out of the car in Oklahoma, and there's a sign that says "Don't vote," and on the back it has a moral case not to vote. This is something that I had already had made up from a "Don't Vote" pledge that the voluntarists of the Ozarks, we had done a "Don't Vote" pledge, but it just says you have no right to steal, enslave, or murder, but by the dark magic of moral transmogrification, it's not a real word, too big for a sign, you can delegate rights you don't have to ruling politicians called a government. And we euphemize these crimes as taxation, conscription, and war. This is not my image. This is one that came from online, but I thought it was a really good image to kind of explain how rights don't come from politicians. You can't go and vote and then make something that was a right into a wrong, that sort of thing. So a lot of people came in with different angles to their to why they were there, and there were Christians, there were QAnon people, a lot of right-wing statists. There were a few anarchists actually there. They were not
truckers, or
no, they weren't truckers.
That might have been another thing that put you on the outside, as the out group. You're not a trucker.
We're not a trucker. We did befriend truckers, though, at the convoy. Even one of them, the lead trucker. There was a lead trucker who had a World War II vet flag that had all these signatures and things, and everyone was always talking about that guy. We befriended that guy. We were his best friends. We would go up and, I guess...
So on the first day, I think what we found was that there were trucker podcasters.
Yeah.
And so we were like, this is interesting, because there were people who were already maybe doing a little bit of live stream, but now they were everyday truckers. One part of the 150, 200, 300 trucks, I don't know, maybe at the biggest time, but I know there's at least like 150 trucks. So these people were now getting tons of views. And so they were becoming live streamers overnight. They were becoming famous in their own way. And so we talked to 3 of those who were all standing around, and we got to kind of talk to them one by one, and they knew, like, oh, those are those guys, okay, let me come talk to him now. You know, like, they knew that their friend was talking to us, and then they were still open to it. So that, we did expect to see more of that, I think. But like you said, we did meet at least one trucker who's very, you know, he pulled us aside and said, I think what you guys are talking about might be, you know, I like what I hear, and I think what you guys talking about might be what me and my friends want to do, because they weren't agreeing with how the convoy was being led. They thought that it wasn't, you know, it wasn't being in your face enough to the people in DC. Again, we didn't go into that ever thinking that protesting was a good thing, but
yeah, I mean, they're driving around the Beltway around DC. I mean, for the folks who don't know, I guess the threat is that the 18-wheelers will drive into D.C. and lock up the nation's capital. And that was always the threat. And they would drive around the Beltway each and every day. And they had millions and millions of dollars in donations. And they were burning away through gas, you know, these 18-wheelers and cars and things, and they were reimbursing people for fuel. We never took reimbursements. But
they always really appreciated the car followers. Kind of to answer that question, they would always say, we got 150 trucks, but this convoy is really also about all you people, you know.
And and a lot of the truckers were not in big trucks, because they were either fired from their jobs or whatever. They were in cars too. So a lot of the people that were truckers weren't driving in trucks. But it was intense, because the truckers who came up to us, they, you know, some of the truckers were saying, I'm not expecting to be able to return home to my family. They thought, this is about freedom. I'm going to do this, and I may not go home. So they had their trucks packed up with everything they might need for essentially like a war almost. Something that was cool was, you know, we see Back the Blue and support the troops, and those aren't things that I align with, but this was very much support the truckers, and they were given a lot of appreciation of truckers, how they're the lifeblood of the economy, and how they keep things flowing and moving. And that was really neat for them to get the appreciation for that. But just to see how intense a lot of these people came in there, a lot of these truckers thinking, this is it, I'm probably going to be in jail. But they couldn't live in a country, in this case, where, you know, the kind of country that they saw, where either they thought it was the fraud in the election, and they thought, Joe Biden's not the president, I can't do this, but mostly because of the mandates, and because these truckers were being told they had to, you know, get vaccinated. At the time, a lot of them were angry, but of course it had gone away. But they were angry that the government has the amount of power necessary to tell a trucker they have to get vaccinated in order to do. I think in this case, you can't go into California. Is that true?
Well, there's other regulations that they were always talking about. That California, they ended up going to California with the excuse being that the regulations always start in California, and there was like 14 bills were about to get passed, really nasty, like requiring children to be able to, without their parents' consent, be vaccinated or something. Like, that was one of them, and they basically, so I'm not sure what it's like in the other parts of the country.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but definitely there was more than the bullet points that you see. There were more things on people's agendas there, ours included. Everyone there had more to their agenda than just what was on the trucker convoy.
And I will say that I didn't want to bring it up the other night when, was it Murdoch brought it up? But, you know, the one thing is that the people there were very radical, and they probably hadn't worn a mask. And they definitely, like, were anti-vax. And it was a really good representation for us to understand there were people there who did not want Trump to be part of it, but they were still conservative. They were like, I don't like that there's Trump signage here. There's a huge Trump
They didn't want it to be political?
They didn't.
Yeah.
They really didn't want to get put into that box. And yeah, there were liberals who came because they agreed very few, but we hung out with them. Like they also came to do, the activism. So that was the one thing that set everyone apart, was that they were just a little bit radical enough that they believed in this, and so it was a different type of radical.
That's fair. That's fair. So how does the leadership of something as loosely organized as this work, or how did it work? Would be a better question.
Yeah.
Who started it, and were they the leadership, and how did that flow over time?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's not one trucker convoy. There were convoys that started out of multiple states, like many different states. Many convoys started, and they all were converging to, I don't know if they converged on more than one location, but in this case it was Hagerstown, Maryland. It was the final destination. So there were four, that I knew of, 4 different trucker convoys who had stationed themselves in the encampment at Hagerstown, Maryland, which is an hour and a half out of DC. And so they were going out each day then. So, but as far as the leadership goes, individuals would start their own convoy, and they would be leader of that. And then once they merged into this final encampment,
was there like a council of the sub-caravan leaders?
Well, so the thing is the first thing to keep in mind is, and we knew this, it's not an anarchist protest.
Right.
But we did find that the encampment was very anarchist in nature, the way they were solving things. And I heard a lot of times in the disputes, some of the people who were volunteering as security would say, we are needing to practice self-governance here. We have to set an example.
I'm sorry. No, you need government to resolve disputes like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was awesome to hear them saying these things, that they need self-governance. In practice, it wasn't that way. I guess the mindset that a lot of these folks had was very much us versus them, and they are an encampment of their own people. And so we were constantly trying to avoid being othered too much, because we knew that it was a very tribal type situation. So that's why we didn't use the word anarchist right away, because we knew they would think weird things. One time I made the mistake of wearing a black shirt and black pants on the same day, and I had our flag tied around my cape. It was a coexist with guns, black flag on the back. And they thought I was Antifa, so I had to explain that to every single person I walked up to, because they thought, oh, Antifa's infiltrated us. But to answer your question about the leadership, individuals would go from their state, and they may find themselves either leading the convoy by happenstance, or they started the convoy and they got people to go. But once you get to Maryland, a lot of the times what we were seeing was we went with what's called the People's Convoy, is what it was called. We got on in Oklahoma, and it met up, and the People's Convoy sort of, I don't know how well, I can tell you how, but they established themselves as the authority, and it's all sort of a show, in a sense. They display to people that we're the people who get to decide if you're going to leave, even though it's a protest. And they do this by trying to find anyone who asks too many questions. So, I don't want to get too deep in this, because it's not really supposed to be about this. It's just the dynamics that go down in this.
I think it's important that we go into it for future reference. If other people want to be missionaries,
Sure.
we need to know how to deal with these intergroup dynamics and not being othered. Because I saw that, like, when you told me what you were doing, my first concern was, well, you're not a trucker. Mm-hmm. They're not going to see you as part of their group. As soon as you start talking to anybody about ideas that don't already align with their normie, statist, blue-pilled stuff, they're going to be like, get the hell out of here. We don't want fucking anarchists representing us when we're trying to make change that we care about. They're worried that you are going to give the media the excuse the media needs to call them extreme anarchist radical nonsense names, right?
And we didn't go on the convoy when we got to the Beltway for that reason. By the time we got to the encampment, it was clear, like, the convoy on the way over was great. People loved us, and we felt like we fit in. But by the time we got to the convoy, it kind of turned into, like, let's not do anything that they're going to say. And it was weird, because then they also were like, well, how many days did you go out? And I was like, so you really want this van? I'm sorry, I'm pointing over here, but it says government is slavery, you own yourself, no rulers, defund politics, taxation is theft, and then Google voluntarism and Google agorism. So it's very clear. Everyone stares at it. There's not a lot of vans like that. And so it was kind of this catch-22 of, like, do you want me to go out there and represent myself, or do you want me to just do my work that I want to do with the people,
Interesting. So you didn't go out
After we got to
keep them from being worried that you were
We went out a few times.
That was my
co-opting their movement,
Yeah, we there were actually some people,
and they still had issues.
Yeah, because we didn't go out or we didn't do this or that. So
Yeah, we went out a couple times on the Beltway, and once into D.C. We parked up really close to the Washington Monument, and we walked around with this sign one time, just to kind of be able to say we did, and just to see what is exactly going on when they do this. But our main goal was, in the encampments, you have many, many different campfires from different groups and stuff. And, the approach that I was taking was I would go up and be like, okay, this is great. So everybody's trying to do this. What are we going to do after that? Is this enough? Is ending the Emergency Powers Act, is that going to be enough? I mean, ultimately, don't we only see the trajectory of states to be more and more tyrannical? It's never been more free. So I was trying to convince people that governments do not give you freedom. They will never give you freedom. You have to take your freedom. And the one trucker we really befriended, he was the lead trucker of the People's Convoy. He was really in line with the agorist message we were sending him. We were saying, look, we just need to do counter-economics. We need to obsolete the state through counter-economics. We need to establish trust networks with people. We need to find ways to dodge these regulations. And we need to be able to basically, we need to have the knowledge and the network needed so that whenever the government tells us you have this choice or this choice, we have infinite other choices. It doesn't matter what they say because we have ways around it. And he understood that. And now he was wanting to be a little bit more radical, but I think he was really disenfranchised by how ineffective their strategy was going around the Beltway. And a lot of the and honestly, to answer your question about trying to avoid being othered, the truckers were really helpful to us. Because a lot of times when we would go from town to town, you'd have a bunch of, folks walking up. I had a lot of people, they walk up to me and they say, you see me? You see you? You're not like me. They did other us, but the truckers were standing right there with us, and they had already heard what we talked to them about voluntarism and all this. They stood up for us, and they said, no, these people have got it right. They understand what, so the truckers were actually supporting us, which was really cool. And, so the truckers, if anything, the truckers who had participated in that were pretty hardcore people, and they really seemed very receptive. And
would you say the number one obstacle to your being there and participating and doing this kind of activism was the sort of intergroup othering dynamics that were trying to push you out?
Well, that didn't happen for a while. I mean,
okay.
We managed to stay under the radar for about 30 days or so, where we just, we weren't going to stir trouble, and we were only going to be, helpful and supportive of everyone there, and that was our goal, was to be supportive of everyone and try to make friends. There were, there was a little bit of drama. Basically there were, I think it was either a trucker lobby who didn't want this protest to be going on the way it was, or possibly feds. We were targeted eventually after about 30 days.
So we were told that, so we only had positive interactions with people. There was maybe one person who just misunderstood what was going on. And it wasn't until we had one negative interaction that the weakness was that we were volunteering our time in a different way than everyone else was. A lot of people wanted to volunteer in the kitchen and do other things, and they felt called to. And I think that's their right. But they when it started to be questioned, well, are these people helping us or not? Well, I've never seen them. And we actually had volunteered in the kitchen and other places. But obviously, if you had never seen us do it, and I don't see them go out. It became one person, kind of insidiously wanted us to leave because of one interaction with our friend. And so then he was able to leverage the fact that even though we had talked to a lot of the normal people, we hadn't talked to a lot of the volunteer people. And the ironic thing was that every time we would go up and talk to the security or leadership, they would come away saying, I like Chris. He's a likable guy. Then they'd say, I understand what you're talking about. You guys seem to be on our side. Your only issue was that you hadn't come out and volunteered. But I just see that as like a deeper issue of people valuing that in a way and not understanding what
So
we
driving
were.
across the fucking country
Yeah.
and doing all
They
this
didn't
stuff.
understand what
that
we were.
wasn't enough. You had to also then volunteer. Like, come
In
on.
order, yeah. So we stopped eating the food, and it was
Well-
still untenable. I think because the fear that we were going to drive them apart and that we weren't
Yeah.
assimilating, and I just wasn't. At
Yeah.
no point did I just go in and grovel and say, "Oh my gosh," like. I don't know if
Right.
that would have helped because of this one person who was trying so hard. And the only reason we seemed to get kicked out is that he caused so much of a fuss. They just didn't want to deal with any of it.
They didn't
And
want
they
drama.
just said,
Yeah.
you guys got to go.
Well, drama is an enemy of any movement.
True,
And
true.
there's something to be said for the leadership deciding to cut losses even if it's painful.
But they didn't kick him out. They kicked us out, which was
Oh, yeah.
insane.
Yeah,
Politics.
And he kept in there.
Well, what was strange? I mean, it was so obviously an act, because I had done the individual that she's talking about. This is somebody. He was one of their live streamers, and he had just made such a big fuss. And he was saying they're trying to bring down the convoy, and he was accusing us of being in the Boogaloo Boys because we had befriended the Boogaloo Boys. There were some people who drove up. They were with the Boogaloo Boys out of another location, and we befriended them because they saw
was it
our
like
message.
old school Boogie Boys or was it the new school
I
Bottom Unity Boogie Boys?
I think it's the new school folks.
Okay.
But they showed up and
Gross,
they immediately
but
said, we're highly suspicious that this convoy has been, compromised, and it was. I mean, we came to find out certainly it was in some way, but the fact that it was so tribalist in nature, like an event like this at Float Fest, we're not tribalists in that sense, and we're not like who's trying to bring this event down, because they're constantly looking for the enemy faction, right? And whenever they found out we were anarchists, I think this guy just lost it. I don't know. When he found out we were anarchists, he
And-
heard the word.
Well, also, they thought that us being homeless, because we're van dwellers.
Yeah.
We realized that the activism that we were doing was like trifold. We were showing them that you could be van dweller and not be considered homeless. We were showing them that there's an anarchist encampment and not everyone needs to constantly be working in the kitchen in order for it to work. I think there's just the fear that everyone had, like, this shouldn't be working. Why is, like, because
many
it
people
really
were with
was
you?
an encampment. Well, you mean at the whole place?
You said encampment. Do you mean like
Sorry.
everyone? Or
I mean,
you
the
had
entire
something? Oh, okay.
encampment was so magical that it was existing.
Talk about that. Like,
yeah.
describe this
Well,
encampment.
I honestly, it was incredible. The first probably week or so, I said multiple times to Morgan, I think I might be in heaven. I literally think I may have died and I'm in heaven because everyone here hates the government. Everyone here wants to get rid of the government in various ways. And we all have, food is being poured in, support from communities, all these donations. And we're all just, discussing strategies and freedom. And it was just like incredible. I loved it.
And that's what the donations were for. The donations of food and money were so that the people who did have the time and energy to commit could do this for the people at home and could network and do all the activism that they wanted. Not so that the people at home could work just to get fed and somehow believe that they needed to do something to,
Describe the
Sorry.
encampment. I would love to hear, like,
Yeah, it was, there is,
how was it organized? How was it arranged?
so Hagerstown Speedway.
What are the parts of it,
Is where they were primarily. So they have like an information booth. It's kind of similar to this. It's a lot larger, but they have in the sense of the structure, they have a medic tent, an information tent, and then they have a tent where they constantly always had hot chocolate and coffee and creamer and
Free.
stuff that the local people from Hagerstown, Maryland were coming in
I'd be in
volunteering.
heaven now. Now you're talking.
Yeah, and so they had
I haven't
that.
had my morning coffee yet, for the record, folks. I'm doing good here.
They had they had porta potties. So it's at a big speedway. So they had a few races too around the speedway that we could watch if we wanted to. But it was just this. I mean, honestly, we were aware that we're in an anarchist encampment, and no one here knows it.
And 3 times a day they'd be feeding us, and all the volunteers were just people from the convoy, and there's no
Yeah.
coercion at first.
Yeah, there was no coercion at first. I think one of the issues was because you had gotten sick for a couple of weeks, And so I was trying to go get food and bring it back to her at the van, and we were trying to keep our distance. We didn't want to get anyone else sick.
It was super cold.
And it was down like 15 degrees, sleeping in a van, no heater, but we stayed with it the entire time. We had people offering to pay for hotel rooms and stuff for people, but we want to stay. We were like, look, we're going to stay with it, with whoever it is. We wanted to establish ourselves as a presence who is here to be supportive, who's not going to leave. We're not going to go to a hotel room. Nothing wrong with the people who did, but we can handle it, But yeah, it was, and one thing I forgot to mention too because I had said it was heaven, part of that leading into that was the drive to this encampment because, and this was fascinating, the media blackout. I'm not saying it was completely blacked out. People know about the trucker convoys. I don't know if people know that there wasn't a single, what do you call it?
Highway overpass
that wasn't lined all the way with people. It was American flags, which I went into it thinking, oh, the flag of my government that I don't support. But I was crying. I was literally crying driving because the interstates all the way to Maryland were lined with people. There were fire trucks with ladders with flags hanging, and everybody was like, yeah, go. I mean, it was an incredible, and I was like, what are we hearing in the media? No one knew. I remember I
didn't hear any of this shit.
Yeah, no one heard any about it.
I literally heard that there might be a trucker convoy starting, and then that's kind of the last I heard.
Everything the media said was like very slanderous and short. Like we looked for what they were doing and we were not surprised. They were trying to say we were MAGA. They call it a MAGA rally.
A MAGA rally. They were literally trying to throw any word out there to get people to look away from it, which, again, we were there not to, we were there for whatever happens. Our goal is to talk about voluntarism with people, and another goal is to listen to people because we knew that people were going there with grievances that they wanted to bring to their government, and we knew that their government wasn't going to listen. So we were there to listen.
Yeah.
What better thing than someone to listen and to even understand the why behind why they're so angry, right?
And there were one of the cool things to describe what it was like. So there was all these different fires, and everyone was very much the ruler of their own fire. They weren't saying like, oh, well, we got rules that we got to follow here. It was very much like you go into your fire, and they were welcoming.
Fire, you mean like a fire pit or fireplace or something?
Sorry, like a bonfire around, and people are camping. And there was this guy, Ricky Bobby, actually, who was doing all the audio and video. And so just this nice volunteer who had all this equipment, and he was parking next to us.
He was actually named Ricky Bobby.
Yeah.
Wait.
Well, it's not his real name, but that's his
know.
nickname. It's Ricky something
I said
else.
That wrong. Self-proclaimed called Ricky Bobby, and he hung out with us, and we were planning more stuff, and we were thinking about interviewing people, and he ended up actually overstepping what his bounds, which we didn't really understand. Like, what's leadership about? Like, he's providing the equipment, and then he was doing like an announcement up at the top, at the front, and someone from the management took the mic from him and was like, hey, I don't know what he's talking about. He's not with us. Like, I don't even know this guy.
Yeah, there was a huge fear of someone circumventing what someone else's agenda was.
You can understand that. I mean, like imagine if you had finally had this moment. You had momentum behind you. You had hundreds of people, thousands people standing on overpasses supporting you.
Yeah,
you would be so constantly freaked out and paranoid that you were going to get co-opted by Antifa, a Fed boy. Like you would just. I understand their paranoia.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
Well, that the individual that Morgan's talking about. So yeah, he did provide the sound equipment, I think, for like 16 days or something before they kicked him out. And
what did he say that?
Oh, he was. I mean, literally, I think the only thing he said was he had mentioned something about the next location. He didn't say where it was. He was giving a little bit of details, which is a security threat to the convoy because and so he didn't give enough details to know where it was, but they got really angry that he started to like allude to it or something, and we didn't think it was at all appropriate for him to get kicked out. I think they were upset because he had a friend with him that refused to let them unplug his mic when he continued talking, because they were basically they sort of slandered and put aside everything he was just saying, and they told him to get off his own mic. It was his property, right? That was their mistake. But a guy stood in the way and said, you can't take this mic. They didn't like that. So they kicked him out of the convoy, and that was kind of where our drama came in, and it's not really as important, but he had gotten kicked out, and we had gone with our friend, and we had gone in a convoy of 3 to go meet them in a gas station and drive back up to the gate to ask to talk to one of the guys that we thought we'd be able to, we'd be able to talk to and negotiate to get this guy in, because, he's a younger guy. It's an opportunity to learn about, well, what are the rules and expectations here? You never told us. You just kicked this guy out. So we went with them, and
so you tried to advocate for the guy that got kicked out.
Well, so this our friend was trying to advocate for him, and we were there to support. He actually put a phone in my hand and said, "I need you to film me this entire time because I don't know what's going to happen. I need you to film me for my safety." And I did, and I actually filmed this individual get arrested for carrying a handgun in Maryland. I just filmed the whole thing. What wound up happening was this individual who Morgan was talking about, that I think his role was character assassination. Like, that's essentially what he was, and he was effective at it.
The live streamer.
The live streamer. He had whispered in the ear of a cop. He whispered something, and I was watching, and he whispered it. It's on another live stream, and the cop walked up. It was totally unrelated. This guy he was carrying a gun, for defense. He had and he even had a permit. Like, not that he should have to, but he even had a permit in Arizona, but he didn't have one in Maryland, and so the cop took him aside and said, "Here, I'm going to take you over in private," and I followed them. He said, "Do you have a firearm on you?" Completely unrelated. He said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Can I see it?" And he didn't want to show it to him. Got arrested. But it was just obvious that they were trying to target people. At that point, I saw him get out, and he was the main one that was suspicious and trying to...
So it was the streamer, you think, told the cop he had a gun?
Well, so this individual...
Who's the streamer? Name names. Fuck this guy.
Jersey J.
Okay.
Was what his name is?
Yep.
But this guy that got arrested, he was actually one of our friends.
This is YouTube drama.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. This is real life drama.
Yeah. Well, he was one of the main bulldogs who he had said the feds have infiltrated. He went in right away, and he recognized Fed plates on one of the cars, and he had taken out his camera and taken a picture. He was trying to document everything, and 2 of the feds got out of the car right up, and they were very angry with him. There was drone surveillance footage. Like, it was very obvious who the feds were. We knew we were in the lion's den.
Yeah.
But
so maybe he was trying to do good then. Maybe he was trying to do good and just got overly paranoid and identified you guys as a problem.
He may have thought that. I mean, we filmed that.
So maybe let's fuck this guy.
Well,
no,
okay. Hold on.
Himself.
So we, in fact, I
hold your fucks till the end.
I kind of admired the guy because, like, he has an amazing skill set, and I had watched there was a car accident that had happened really near the gate, and he had run out there and cut a bunch of lines and prevented a fire and saved somebody, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And in my mind, I was thinking, because I'm here at the encampment to support the encampment, why don't we start doing knowledge transfer? Why don't we have everyone at the encampment be able to learn how to save people like that? Because it's through knowledge that we can be free. If you have the knowledge on how to have your own alternatives to issues, you can be free. What better thing to do than to get everyone here, trained in rescue stuff? So I actually admired the guy, and I thought, this guy's got a lot to offer.
And you had told him that. So he was our campmate. We were in the same little fire circle, and our friends had all left, and so you had told him about how you really admired the first responder aspect.
Yes. Yeah, I knew, so we knew he was planted by security to watch us. We knew that was the case.
And again, staying empathetic. Yeah. I can see why, right? For the reasons that we already kind of talked about.
Well, the issue...
Or do you disagree? Do you think they crossed the line somehow?
He was... So we had given him no reason whatsoever to have problems with us.
Is this yours?
No. We had given him no reason whatsoever to have an issue with us. And what was interesting was just how he responded, as if we're this huge enemy, when in reality, every interaction we'd had up to that point where I was literally just filming. I was just filming the guy. And he saw me and associated me. After that point, he said, this guy is with Antifa. He's feeding them information. He's a mole, blah, blah, blah. And then security said, if they do anything the next day after this incident, they're out. And so there was a hill, and this is what I didn't like about it. He went up on the hill, and he started filming. He said, let's see. He goes, here's these criminals in the convoy. They're with the Boogaloo Boys. They're trying to bring the convoy down. Look at them. And I was actually going to console a lady next to our camp. She was crying, and she was there that night before, and the guy that was filming us had pushed her camera out of the way, but I didn't know what happened, and someone said he had hit her. So I went up to her, and I was like, I gave her a hug. I'm like, I'm so sorry, but it was this old lady. And he's up there on the hill saying, criminals, he's probably plotting on how to bring down the convoy. And he's just completely saying, I'm like, where is he getting this? Other than I did befriend someone who's with the Boogaloo Boys, who told them that he's with the Boogaloo Boys. Other than that, I never was.
Was Antifa there?
I heard Antifa was in D.C. I don't know if Antifa was there. I heard I don't know if Antifa was there. I think there were some Proud Boys there. I know there were some Proud Boys there. Anyway, this guy, he was on them from the get-go, and that's why I think, and this is my theory, I can't prove any of this. I can't prove any of it. But this live stream, when he whispered in that cop's ear about this individual, this was probably their number one suspect, because this guy could tell everyone what's going on. And he said, this guy's got a gun, he got arrested. We wound up waiting outside of the prison or in the camp on him because he had no one. He was in Maryland from Arizona. He had no one. So we waited on him and helped get him bailed out of jail and stuff. But
so it just shows how someone like Jersey J, who wants clout and wants to feel like he's protecting the convoy, can really damage people. Because that was the problem, is that the next morning he's filming us in our private space. He was zooming in on the trunk, the open trunk. Let's see what they got in there.
Yeah, spying on us.
It was just and then he said, security asked me to do this. And so, like Chu said, I mean, maybe they did. And that's why we didn't actually really go up to anyone after this. Like, our character had been completely defamed on live. Yeah. All of his commenters were, also, oh, yeah, that couple from last night, and I was on there trying to field damage, like, hey, like, I'm that couple. Not on his stream, but actually on the even more mainstream. I just was trying to understand what had happened. So it seemed like the night of the arrest was just a pivotal moment for people who wanted to use it as kind of a power transfer and to get all the leftish, which Boogaloo is not left, but they thought it was.
Yeah, they thought it was.
Just to get all these infiltrators out. And we were the only ones left. And so we were like, wait, we have to stay at this point. Yeah. We changed what we were doing. We were going out a lot less because the people at our own fire right outside of our van were, the next morning we come out and she says, well, what have you done? And
what did you do? She was basically, literally she was interrogating me and demanding I justify my existence is essentially what it was. And just completely hateful. And everyone at that fire just hated us all of a sudden. It was our fire. We built the fire. We built the pathways and everything. Mm-hmm. So it was very effective what this live streamer had done. But we saw it happen many ways. The first people that got kicked out were so Ricky Bobby. He was kind of a media presence. He was
in the medical.
And then they kicked out a nurse. And I don't know why. We went to a house where a lot of these people, I think they had said...
Is this private property? How does one get kicked out of a public event?
It is private property, and that's not confusing. It's Hagerstown Speedway, and it is owned by someone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it is private property.
So that's how you get kicked out.
And people, so what had happened that night in the incident was no one knew. There was this huge suspicion. Who's in charge? Who's trying to infiltrate? And in my mind, and I'd always told people the lesson, the three things I wanted to nail across to people were all authority comes from ownership. You own yourself, and government is slavery. That's what I was trying. That's every time I talked to people. That's what I wanted to tell them is those three messages. And everyone was confused what's going on here. But at that event, one of the guys said, "I actually have right here." He had some kind of document written out by the owners to be able to trespass people. I said, where have you been? Mm-hmm. Where has this guy been all this time? Because, someone actually has ownership. That would have answered everything. So it was mostly a lack of clarity. I think the main warning going into these things is just that there's going to be a lot of people who, if they're not paranoid in the beginning, they might start to get paranoid.
Yeah.
And they will develop these narratives and things. And that's why I think if you're going to go into these kind of convoys, it is good to be below the radar. But I do strongly recommend to people who are comfortable with it. It is dangerous. It's dangerous. You could get arrested. You could get harmed. We actually, just if I'm honest with you, we had a death threat against us after we had already been kicked out. We got kicked out twice. We were asked to leave the Speedway and wait for some people to talk to them about whether or not we could get back in. This was after I'd spoken with their entire security team. There was about 9 people standing around. And I explained to them, they said, who are you? what are you about? They wanted me to tell them, and I told them each and every line, every single reason the trucker convoy was there, and how voluntarist philosophy and voluntarism aligns exactly what they're saying. I didn't only tell them I didn't only tell them what they were there for, but why that matters. And I had smiles on all the security's faces. And this is why they didn't kick us out the first time, because the only reason we got kicked out and asked to go to the front of the place was some other lady came around. And she walks up and she says, "There's too much on the line. I don't have time for this. Y'all have to go." Which I thought, that's reasonable.
Watch out.
Oh, of course. I thought that's reasonable until they did it again with a different lady. Exact same thing. It was like a play the second time I saw it. And I realized what I realized was happening was, and I know this happened because there were true protesters who seemed to have a good heart and the right motivations. I was kicked out along with another like old school hippie guy who was a carpenter and a great guy who was nothing but helpful and volunteered all the time. There was a Mennonite who was the primary mechanic for the convoy who they kicked out. And then there's another guy who, he didn't get kicked out, but he was, he definitely had his heart in the right place. Anyway, they wound up leaving him. So they told him and a couple other people, "Hey, we're going to go do a cookout over here. You all stay here and you can eat some of these leftover food." And they just left them. They just abandoned them. So, but what I saw happening and what they did to me and what they did to other people was they try to get you to stand there and tell you why you're at the protest. And if you're there for true, real reasons, they'll say, "This man here," the man who actually wound up, we wound up getting in a chase in a parking lot of a gas station the second time we got kicked out, and I'll tell you about that in a sec. But that man put his reputation on the line twice for me. He said, "This man here just explained to me every reason he's here. He's here for every single reason and at a very deep level. Does he have other agendas? Is he an anarchist? Does he have another agenda as well? Sure, but who doesn't?" So this guy put his reputation on the line, and I thought highly of him in that time. Until I realized what was actually happening was he was marking me to all his friends to say, "This guy is one of us." In reality, he's saying, "This guy's got to go." And that's what did it. That's what happened. They kicked us out. We went to lunch. We didn't want to wait outside the gate for them. And then we came back to the next location where they came from, where they met up. We went to the next location to talk to them. Same situation. It was a different set of people. There were a few similar people. Same situation. I've got all these people in front of me. They're interrogating me. I'm telling them all the reasons we're there. And the same guy walks up and he says, "This man here, he talked to me previously when I asked them to leave. He told them they weren't kicked out. He said, this man is here for the same reason we are, and so is everyone else." Same thing happened. Another lady walks up and she goes, and everyone's smiles on everyone's faces. We're good. We're in. We're still. We can keep going. We can keep talking to people about voluntarism. Then another lady walks in and says, "Nope, there's too much on the line. What's going on? You got to go." No ability to defend ourselves or anything. We had just convinced everyone there except for this person who is viewed as an authority figure as being there for their reasons. So anyway, we did have extra reasons. We never lied about our reasons for being there either. We were very open about it. We were just saying, look, there's a philosophy behind what y'all are here for.
Yeah.
So.
Let's talk about what, two more topics. Let's talk about what good came of it. Like what, you had good conversations. Were you able to wake anybody up? How did that go? How far did you get in that regard? How successful was your activism throughout the course of this event? And then the second thing I'd like to end with would be what not to do or what to do for other people that want to engage in this type of thing in the future. So let's begin. Like, what good came of it? How efficacious was this activism?
Due to the unique nature of it being a trucker convoy, I would say it was extremely effective because it reaches an audience that I think is much less likely to be on these YouTube channels. I mean, these are churches and local communities. It's very much a grassroots effort. It's a statist effort, but it's a grassroots effort that they care about why we were there with them. And they showed up and they wanted to hear why we were with them. So it's not just going into the protest and trying to figure out why other people are there. It's literally people like, "Tell me what you're here about." And they love to hear it. If you're good at explaining it, they love to hear it. So extremely successful in talking to, it was almost like a traveling fair or something. And you have people coming and they want to hear what you have to say. So in that respect, as well as at the camps, talking to people, I would say probably maybe 3 or 4 people that we ever talked to were volunteers that ever even heard of it. Mm-hmm. So just showing up at the campfire, talking to people about this, asking the questions, about what's next, Is this going to be effective? Are we going to be free after this? Is this going to be free? Just trying to ask the right questions. I think these are questions that these people have never asked. So can I tell you quantifiably exactly how successful I was? No. But I think given the amount of receptiveness that almost everyone at that encampment had at the campfires that we went to, I think it was extremely successful, not only for the people who came and wanted to know what we were there for, but also for the people who were there with us. So success-wise, very successful in getting the message out. Is it more successful than a YouTube channel? You're not going to reach as many people, but you're going to reach an audience that you probably wouldn't reach otherwise.
How long did this take? How long were you involved with them total?
Like 45 days, something like that.
And how many people? It's impossible to get an exact number.
Oh, my.
How many people do you think you touched, let's say, or, well, you know what I mean, touched with the message, made an impression on, had a conversation with, got the word out
How
about?
about per day? How many people did we talk to
Ooh.
specifically who had never heard about voluntarism and who came out of it, like per day? That's like at least 5 people.
Yeah, I'd
per
say
person per each of us. 'Cause
Yeah.
we would go separately.
And we had a lot of people. We had one. There were a lot of different communities that showed up to help out. There was like the Chinese American Support Truckers group. Didn't know that existed, but they had done an interview with me very early on. And later on, it was several weeks later, the lady who had interviewed walked up and said, "How are you doing?" and asked me, and she said, "Do you remember me?" I said, "Yeah, I remember you. You interviewed me." And she said, "Well, you had the most popular interview of all of them." And all I did was tell them why I'm here. You own yourself, and the reasons that people, I don't remember exactly what I told them, but apparently it was one of the most successful and received interviews that they'd given at all with that community. But yeah, I'd say, it really depends. It's hard to say how many people you reach. I'd say 5 is probably an understatement in this case for
per
that.
day. And then we can think about the actual people who seemed, because we became kind of a meme, I would say. Like, we were so awesome and interesting that it was the most rewarding when we saw others refer to us, in defense or even in just an explanation. So I had one bad experience, I said, and I came over to the fire and I was talking to this lady next to it, and then she went up to the fire and she said, well, they actually invited us over. And she said, well, I don't think this woman actually understands why we're here, referring to me. I don't think she understands the Emergency Powers Act. And, I responded and she left, and the fire, they had known me from like 2 or 3 nights ago. And so like, I didn't even have to deal with them even like worrying about like the slander that was being thrown on me. I was just kind of like, they're like, oh no, she's the anarchist. Here, I actually want to keep talking to you. And then I talked to them for another 20, 30 minutes. And so that meme-ness, that just the fact that the people in the convoy who were looking for another option, they saw that. And they were saying, well, what we're doing is not effective. Let's go. And they really liked the idea that we were for the people of the people, like that we are the encampment. It's not the people owning it. We all came here for our own reasons, and no one can tell us, what's going to be effective and what we can and can't do. And so there was a lot of people who would walk around and try to rile up, not a lot, maybe 2 or 3 that I knew specifically who were like, they were Christian, they were not anarchists, but they liked us. And so to have those people kind of more on our side and more understanding what we were doing, then we could have joined forces. And it's kind of why I mentioned that Ricky Bobby and everything.
All right, let's talk about what you regret doing, wish you had done different.
Yeah.
From the outside, let me speculate. I would suspect that you maybe regret getting involved in any dispute resolution or advocating for people, because that probably put a spotlight on you and kind of ruined your ability to be incognito, or at least more under the radar.
Yeah, definitely. We were already dealing with what you naturally deal with camping. So we were camping here for 40 days or whatever, and we were already trying to take care of our own needs while trying to deal with all this other drama that was going on. So I remember before we had gotten involved on an incident that eventually led us to getting kicked out, thinking, man, this is a huge time and resource investment, and there's risk involved. And I don't know if this is going to jeopardize what we're doing. I don't think it did I guess maybe it did. It did jeopardize what we were doing. But I do regret to a certain extent getting involved in that, but at the same time, it was the right thing to do. So I do and I don't regret it. Honestly, and
my takeaway from that part of the story was a rule for this kind of activism is to never be a source of drama, because the groups are looking for those sources to kick them out.
That's right. That's right. And
we had already tried to avoid that by saying we didn't want to be involved in it, and then our friend said, well, can you please just film me and don't be involved? And that's really all it took.
Yeah.
So
That is involved. Yeah.
And there's also, there's certain cultural things that come into play, and this might not be something that everyone maybe has heard of before, but some people think that the best possible way that they can use their time and their bodies and their minds is to work in the kitchen, which is great. And if that's your calling, that's great. And there were people who did that, and they did an amazing job, and so much for the convoy. But then, our calling was different from that. And I think maybe one of the regrets I have was not trying to be more public. I did volunteer, a couple different times. I woke up 5 a.m. and worked until noon, didn't even get food working in their kitchen, and I never got recognition. So I think one of the things is at these events, if you're going to help out to try to keep your reputation sound, do it in a way that's very public and visible. That's not the way I normally go about my life, but I realized if people had seen and I had made more of a point of volunteering in ways that people see me doing it, then it wouldn't have been an issue.
Okay, so that's a good maybe suggestion, or rule number 2 would be to maybe have your own thing that you're providing. If you don't want to link up with them and work in their kitchen, have your own thing that maybe you're providing from your car or your place or something. So
the
you
issue
can
with that is that if you do, so yes.
be known for helping in a way.
I guess part of my thing was that don't overextend yourself with helping, because part of the efficacy of helping is who knows, who sees. They're not going to see the 12 hours you spent, so at least take care of yourself for part of that. But it's really, there was no platform for us to make an announcement, and that's what we realized is really communication would have been key, because if we just said, hey, we're volunteers, this is what we offer, if anyone wants to come up to us, we would have been able to put our best foot forward.
Maybe like a sign outside your camp saying what you're offering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe like a loudspeaker where once a day you walk around and be like, hey, we're offering these services over at this location.
Yeah, and we were much more discreet about it, because we had, we had a bunch of steaks and things, Agorist steaks from the network in the Ozarks, and bacon. I wish I had some here to give you. If you try it, it will be the best bacon you've had in your life, no doubt. We had bacon.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, I'm serious. I mean, I'll bring some down to you. But but we were cooking up eggs, bacon, French toast, pancakes. Just all kinds of things for the people who were at our campfire, because we wanted to make it and we were smoking people out. Okay, we wanted people to be like, this is a place I want to be. And if we can get people to be
at a right-leaning event, maybe the pot was a bad call.
I don't think so, actually.
That was the third activism. I didn't say, we had all these different levels, but there were so many people there who were looking for that. And I felt like that was just another opportunity for the kind of left-right to kind of come together. Is that they were they really appreciated it. They needed it for pain. That's why I say looking for that kind of okay, I'm just not going to get, okay, you guys,
Yeah, pot
so
was a big
friend.
Unifying factor. It was a big unifying factor.
And we did have the security come up one time and ended up leaving with just saying, well, I just don't want to see it. He didn't even...
Is he a cop?
He was an ex-cop, ex-Green Beret.
Well, who gives a fuck what he wants to see? Oh, sorry, no.
But
rule number 1, don't be a source of drama. So that all kinds of goes. That kind of all goes
so
back to
I was kind of hey, do you want everybody who? I was a little bit, sarcastic. Do you want every single person in this camp to not have this out, because there's just a lot of people that are very helpful in other ways. And
it had been like a month, and 3/4 of the people in the camp had
so
been smoking out.
It was because we noticed the large amount of the acceptance in the camp. But it was
interesting.
Well, but
risks.
pot was used as an excuse. They eventually used that as an excuse to kick some people out. It wasn't for us, but it was clear that it was one of the excuses they would use, whoever they become. to kick people out. Another thing I didn't tell you is with regard to who they are. The person who initially asked us to go stand outside of the side of the speedway, I don't know why he said this, but he told me twice when he was talking to me that he's with the Department of Homeland Security. So that's one thing. Don't know if it was true. Don't know why he would tell me that. But just as a heads up to people, there was a man who was presenting himself as the head of security who told me twice he was with Homeland Security. So do I think he was? I don't know. But he was also the guy, the second time we got kicked out where we had talked to people, he was also the guy that led a chase against us. So he kicked us out along with that Mennonite, which, that was the biggest thing I needed to see. This guy was the most, straight-laced guy you could find. And when they kicked him out, he said, "I can see you have no respect for your elders." Like, he's literally that kind of person, and he gets kicked out. He's an incredible guy. But when they kicked us out, we were waiting at a gas station near where they were camped out at. We were waiting because one of our friends was one of the people who was kicked out. He's a friend that we wound up helping all the way across the country eventually, but he was kicked out, and they pulled up behind us. The convoy had gone into this gas station we were at, I guess, to refuel and go to the next location. And Morgan and I and this other guy were sitting in my car. We were waiting for someone because his belongings were in the encampment, but he was kicked out. He didn't get to get his stuff, right? And he eventually did. Someone helped us out. But the convoy, in the meantime, pulled up behind us at that gas station, and they parked a big green van behind mine. I remember looking in the rearview camera, and I saw it, and then I saw several people lining up behind our car. I was like, shit, this is it. We're stuck. And there's a concrete wall in front of us, and there's a car on either side of us, and we're parked. Luckily, the car to our left didn't park all the way up. And so we were blocked in, and that van eventually pulled out. It was this hippie guy that I knew. I knew he didn't want to be there doing this. He pulled out, and I was like, oh, it's our chance. I try to back out in my rearview camera, and I see the guy who said he was with Homeland Security in his black van comes up and pulls up behind me, turns toward my car. I see it in my camera. I'm like, okay, they definitely have us blocked in, and I have no idea what's going on. It's a very dangerous situation. So, but Morgan had noticed between the concrete and where the car was, there was just enough space for me to kind of squeeze my car through, and I did. And then that black van and another van, a red van, had chased us through the parking lot.
Is this like so this is like they kicked you out and you came back? Is that why they were so pissed off? Why'd you come back?
They had asked us to leave and speak with people about coming back in, and we were already just shaken up enough by it that we're like, we're going to go to lunch and we'll try in a few days after things have calmed down.
They said, you're not kicked out. The people who we have to ask about you are not here. Could you wait at the front gate?
Yeah.
Our friend Jim had just arrived from Pennsylvania. So we just took off, and then our friend...
so you exceeded the drama threshold.
Basically invited us back so we thought that he had talked to them, and he invited us to come, and he was going to help me work on my van, and maybe he
talking Jim, the guy I interviewed last night.
Yeah, you interviewed him.
Jim.
He was he came there to support
Quaker.
us.
The Quaker. I have interviewed a Quaker now. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Man, he tells good stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that interview will be on Anarchast as well, for those of you that don't know.
Yes, really interesting guy. But yeah, the Mennonite, not Jim, the Mennonite had invited us back to the camp, and he was there, and we were just going to go talk to them. But really, the thing about the chase, that their excuse, which is why I don't think it's like as good of a story for like, oh, they're horrible, that they said that they just thought that we were trying to follow them.
Yeah.
So I mean
it was screeching tires,
because
chase,
we were trying to leave and get out.
Yeah,
of
we
there,
were trying
and
to
they
get
were
away,
blocking us in. But when we finally pulled around and he headed us off again, we were about to get out, and he like pulled up.
So what was the point? Were they trying to talk to you?
He got out of the car.
They were intimidating.
He walked up to Chris, and Chris is all, "Oh, what? I trust you. What's going on? You're the one who supported me." He said that.
Yeah. I was like, "I trust you. I trust you." It was what I was doing. It was high adrenaline. I was getting all the trust I had out of my mouth. I was saying, I trust you, basically saying, I realize I can't trust you, but I was saying I did trust him because he literally was the only guy of all those people when I was in that, it was kind of a stressful situation trying to convince people that you're there for reasons that do not oppose what they're there for. And this was the guy that put his reputation on the line. Well, I'll tell you what it was like, and I'm not a Christian myself, but it was a lot like Judas. Judas kissing Jesus on the cheek to signal to the soldiers, this is the guy you're going to take. It was just like that. I'm not saying I'm not like Jesus. I'm saying that the situation went down like that. This is the guy who advocated for me and then wound up leading a chase against me. So, but yeah, they chased us down twice. They pinned us in the one time. We lucky to squeeze through, and there was another tier up there that we ran up in that direction, and they blocked off both exits, and he came up behind us. So
Because they wanted to talk to you?
he
Like, what was the-
he walked. We have it on film. I mean, I can send you the film if it's on YouTube, but it's not
He thought that
public.
we were going to. So this is the parking lot kind of next to where they are. This is not their parking lot. It's a gas station.
Yeah.
So they were, I guess, gonna gas up there and then leave. And so yeah, it really doesn't make sense. But I guess they just thought that we were pulling out to leave to then.
they were trying to stop you from
then
They
following.
thought we
follow
were
them.
following them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that motivation makes sense. All right.
It was
I
just.
mean, it's illegal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
To
box
scary.
you in
It
and
was
terrify
really
twice.
horrible.
They boxed us
Yeah.
in twice. You
Yeah.
know, boxed us in twice.
And we
But-
just didn't know what was happening. At any point, they could have, just want to talk. They could have tried
Yeah,
to
they
let
could have
us
said
know.
anything.
But I don't know. I have something about, what I think people could take away from what we learned as well. Mentioning the work ethic idea. We didn't realize for a few weeks, but we were doing full-time activism there. And I think there's just a cultural understanding that I would like anyone who is trying to do this to really get, is that the magic that we were doing was we were making this camp. The encampment itself was a encampment of anti-government people who, had no chosen ruler, no one who was telling them what to do. They just had a shared goal, at least one shared goal, which was to remove the Emergency Powers Act. And it was that type of thinking, and this is my opinion, but there's something to the type of thinking that it can't work, or that, that we're not doing enough, that someone needs to be working 8 hours a day in a normal way in order for something to make sense. And I think that could have been what allowed us to kind of get kicked out in the end. It's like, oh, well, you're a protester, but the convoy was being construed as a homeless camp. And so it's very easy for the culture to be, oh, you're a protester, but if we can't see how much you're producing for the kitchen, somehow it's easy to just devalue you because you're homeless.
Yeah.
And that whole narrative is ignoring the fact of what we're there for and how we are choosing to literally
spend our time
forsake
existing
a
here
home
for them
in order to do it. So I would
Yeah.
that's a kind of a strength, an inner strength that could help if people were being attacked for what they're doing. Because there's really no way to win when someone thinks in their head, what they believe that it won't work and that this shouldn't work and that you can't make change.
Yeah.
And so they're going to look for reasons to perpetuate the world that they already live in which we're just in a 9 to 5 and no one can get out. So it's like, don't let people who don't believe lead you. I'd say, like, don't let people who really don't have any imagination be the one to tell you whether or not you're making a good contribution, I guess.
Seems like that goes back to you need to kind of fit in with the crowd that you're trying to proselytize to a certain degree.
Yes, if you want to stay. And we
Because
didn't.
it lowers the drama meter.
Yeah, our solution is we did not want to I
didn't need
had
to
just
stay.
quit my job. I didn't quit my job to come work in a kitchen for free for
Yeah, I
a status
understand.
convoy.
I understand.
So our solution was, okay, we'll take nothing from them.
Yeah.
So we started collecting rainwater and filtering it through our Berkey, and we had our own food, and we were driving out getting we just stopped taking anything from the convoy. We even drove to the gas station to go to the bathroom. We stopped using their porta potties. And that was what we said, because we were like, look, we're not going to work in your kitchen. We understand you want us to work in your kitchen now, but we're not here for that. That's not what we're using our lives for. We don't want anything from you. We've never taken gas money from you. We don't want any of your food, any of your water, any of it. And we did fine, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. We were just trying to show them we're here to support you. We're not here to leech from you. We don't need anything from you.
Well,
but
we were a foreign emissary. That's nothing we didn't really understand exactly, like the place of a foreign emissary. Because the thing is that, honestly, I had compassion for us, because if you're not able to participate and feel welcome in the convoy, then that it kind of takes away, like, why would you volunteer your time towards something? So even if you got the minimum back, which was get to eat food and use the restrooms, if you are already looked at as an outsider, you're not really participating in getting the benefit of the convoy. So I'd say also, if you're a foreign emissary, like, understand that it's like the success for us was just the more people we got to talk to, and to not get kicked out in a way that made us look bad was important to us. But it wasn't not getting kicked out, because of course we knew that this wasn't our people.
So I've got two more. I'm trying to extract bullet point rules for people, right? Because I think it'll help, right? So I have two more. Proposal. Tell me what you guys think. Number 3 would be curate who you associate with carefully, because, like you said, you had a friend. Your friend got into some drama, and that drama was attached to you and affected your total drama meter, right? So for the purposes of your activism there, might it have been wise to say, hey, man, why don't you go ahead and take off, and we'll catch up later, and sort of just kind of, we're here to be missionaries. We're still friends, but for the purposes of our work here, we need to not associate for a while because you've been, burned, so to speak, something like that. Some kind of OPSEC or just kind of planning strategy. What do you think?
I think really it comes down to just doing what you know is the right thing. And in this case, the individual that we were associating with, I think it was the right thing what we were doing. But if your goal is to not get kicked out, then sure, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and it might
I'm not criticizing what you guys did or this person or anything. I'm trying to help other people looking to, like, if you're going to go to one of these events, associate with people that have the same goals. Low drama. What was number 2?
Oh, well, low drama, people who share a common, like, grievance, such as...
I forgot our rules. No! Okay, I'll remember them as we go.
Low drama association, and I don't actually know what your third one was.
Okay, there was another one in there. I'll remember it.
Fit in. Volunteering. I think that was one of the ones that you mentioned.
Fit in using whatever
method you can to not be othered. What you don't want is to be othered, because...
Show yourself contributing in some way. Have something that you're contributing publicly and loudly. That was number 2.
Exactly. Because if everyone already has a positive understanding of you, if we had gotten to every single person, then it would have been a lot harder to get us out.
Low drama, contribute publicly, loudly, something. Careful who you associate with. And my number 4 that I extracted from this is know when to leave.
Yeah.
Like, know when it's time, know when you've done as much as you're going to be able to, know when you're about to hit that drama meter, and just walk away. That's fine. Yeah. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's solid advice for sure. I guess to pair with that last one you said is also be ready to deal with your own ego. Because we were there, we were the last ones that were representing what we were there to represent. We were the last ones, and we were like, if we leave, this convoy is no longer in any way, shape, or form what we bring to it. So, I don't know if that was an ego thing or what, but we tried our absolute best to stay with it even after the drama. But I'd say just be willing, definitely be willing to cut that tie.
Understand,
no matter how much you've put into it. So.
I had never been, hated like that before. And it was not even too intense. It could have been a lot more intense, but just to know that I could be looked at and misunderstood. So I would say definitely try to separate yourself. 29.
Okay.
Yeah. So try to separate yourself. Like, and I went through a little bit of drama in school, but I guess it was never enough at this level of just grown adults telling you that, like, morally you are, evil and
and just many different things. The one that was new to me was this whole very strong message of, because I'm homeless I don't matter and I can't make a difference, which I knew wasn't true, but it's just a lot of people see that, and it's just homeless has this weird stigma that people are like, oh, well then this and this must be about you, like
it could work. Sorry. That's what I was saying before. It's because people can't imagine how you could be homeless and not take from people.
Right.
They just think that they have to always give because they wouldn't be able to exist.
Well, I've heard you many times, Chewy, tell me that you're, homeless by choice.
Yeah.
And I take that as you attempting to change the stigma of that word. as kind of a micro activism in your everyday language.
Mm-hmm.
We do the same thing with volunteerism. Like when we talk about taxation as extortion, like a lot of people say, this guy paid his taxes. I say, well, this guy got extorted for. It's just little language tricks like that can have an effect over time on people. And I saw that as one of them when you say that, I'm homeless by choice.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, could that be that maybe that wasn't the time and place for that little nugget of activism?
We never did. We never told them.
Okay.
They just implied.
Decided. Oh,
Yeah.
Because we were better at sustaining ourselves, probably.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, just to kind of round out my number 4, know when to leave, I would say it's important because if you had talked to, it sounded like 10 people a day, let's say, so a minimum, you at least influenced in some way 500 people over the course of this thing. If at the end you overstay your welcome, there's a chance that you can sort of retroactively taint those associations and impressions that you've made by leaving on bad terms. Whereas if maybe you had left I'm not saying you did it wrong, I'm just thinking through what I'm going to do in the future. If I leave a little bit before that bad ending happened, then I preserve those memories of me and all those people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be another reason why number 4 might be useful.
I love that because it's not trying to be perfect. It's saying that there's, obviously if you leave, you gave up. So there's going to be different camps, but the actual method itself isn't perfect. So I'd say don't get caught up in the rhetoric because leaving is not giving up because you never, really thought that was, you're already doing activism in your own life. You're not giving up in your own life.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, have an objective that you can achieve.
Yeah.
Going into these is huge because, from the very beginning we were talking and we were like, what a strange way to use $8 million, to burn fuel driving around Washington, D.C. But our objective the whole time, I took encouragement in knowing, well, that's not our objective. Our objective is to be in front of people, in front of faces who are wanting to hear what we have to say, who are desperate for freedom, for solutions, and have never heard voluntarism. And so we succeeded hugely in that. So
that
very
goes for
fulfilling.
everything in life.
Yeah.
Pick your objective, know your objective first,
Yeah.
and keep your strategy pointed at that objective.
Yes.
Kill your ego when it pops up,
Mm-hmm.
It's good. It's good advice. I want to have you back someday to talk about your van living, your purposeful homelessness, as you say.
Sure.
It's a lifestyle that fascinates me and confuses me and bewilders me. But I love seeing other people do things that bewilder me and be happy doing it. It's just like it's an intriguing life thing. I'm at a place in my life where I'm like, God damn, those people are weird, but I'm so happy they're happy.
I'm ridiculously happy. I got to tell you, because I had a really nice house and I had a well-paying job, and I am 5 times happier. I mean, literally 500% happier than I ever was. Just when you get back to the basics and you stop worrying about, and again, I'm not saying it's wrong to pay a mortgage or rent, but when you stop having a lifestyle that's so expensive that you're having to sell so much of your time and your focus to someone else that could be used toward the things that your heart is passionate about, it's soul draining. It really is soul draining, and that's my own problem. Not everyone gets caught really deep in a career that they don't have passion for. But as soon as I got out of that house, I lost the tether. I realized, wait a minute, I can drive to Dallas or to California or to Maryland, and I don't have to worry about going back to a house. I don't have to worry if my pipes are freezing. I don't have to, all these different things that a house, you're constantly thinking, I got to get back to that place. When you no longer have somewhere else to get back to, it's like, where do I go next? It's so fulfilling for me.
You can always leave. If you're ever uncomfortable, you can always leave. It's really, I think, really important to me to understand that we're not taking, that pretty much there are places who would benefit from our presence because of who we are and how we've built ourselves and that we care. But there are places that, there are so many people who want us around that it's not really for me about, where am I going to pay rent? Where am I not going to be leeching off of someone? It's like, it's a more positive, forward-facing thing. It's like, how are we going to divide between all the people who are wanting us and welcoming us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, closing thoughts on your caravan adventure. You want to go first? Chewy, let her think. You go
Yeah,
first.
Yeah,
sure. I mean, I've already expressed how incredibly effective this method of activism was for us. It's a very specific thing. It's a very specific type of protest that these convoys are. But it's extremely effective. So I do recommend that anyone who's willing to do this, anyone who can handle kind of a camping lifestyle, you can probably handle this. I recommend it if that's your thing. But if you're not willing to take the risks that come with this, I mean, we did receive a death threat. I won't say who it was from, but we've mentioned it on this comm. We did receive a death threat from somebody, and it was very unpleasant. So if you're not wanting to deal with that, then don't. But I really think there's a huge audience out there that you would typically think are a lot more closed-minded than they are. So, this experience restored my faith in humanity, and we've also got a lot of connections now that, as bad as it seems to get kicked out of the protest, we became really close with the other people who were kicked out with us. And so we've got a lot of really close connections. We're going to be driving back to Pennsylvania to meet up with that Mennonite we told you about. We've got some ideas on how we can bring some service and value to Mennonite communities up there and how they can make it a win-win situation for the Agorist network. So that's kind of on our fairly short-term agenda once we get back to that area here probably in a month. So
Yeah, I think.
But what I'm saying is even in tragic things where you have all this drama and you're getting kicked out, you still can build even stronger relationships because it's that just the strife of being in a protest brings you together and builds bonds. Also, whenever you go down, you build bonds, and so I think, I don't regret any of the decisions that were made on the convoy, honestly, so.
Yeah, and I think it's been said, but I think what was so amazing was the amount of people. I think I know a lot of the people there were the only ones that they knew who were open-minded in the ways that they were. So there's a lot of people, like Chris said, who just wanted to be heard. And that's really fascinating. I think there aren't enough protests, or I don't really think protest is the correct thing, but kind of there aren't enough gatherings that are not center, but are neither left nor right. And there's not just like enough of our type of people. And they were willing and open. And I think that's what was so important to see for us, is what types of people are willing and open. Because I had been really burned by conservative ideology in the past because of like my hair. I'm automatically looked at as a liberal. And so it healed a lot for me of like, wow, wait, they actually...
Yeah. I understand the hair thing. Yeah.
Yes, I forget. Yeah. And it showed me that there's this whole group of people who are not tied to being one thing or another, and they would come. If it was about, they would come out if it was about freedom, and suddenly all these different groups could have a unity. Bottom unity is bad, but like, it was just like, let's just forget about our issues right now and let's just focus on taking off this horrible government system.
To be clear, I don't mind unity with people with opposing views.
Sorry, that was very specific.
I mind unity with violent communist fucks.
Okay,
that's the problem. So outside of that,
well, and
unity's fine.
One more huge takeaway that I got from it was just, I had been through social media and things of that nature, and then through the network in the Ozarks as well. That's how I've been talking with people, but I'd never gone into a situation where I knew that everyone I was going to talk to has never heard what I'm going to talk about. And I was a little bit nervous. I wasn't sure how receptive they would be, but voluntarism itself, it's such an effective philosophy. Anyone who actually gave me the time, who actually sat down and listened, I don't think I ran into a single person that it didn't resonate strongly with.
It's getting easier as we go because the government's getting more and more tyrannical, and it's harder and harder to argue against, well, hey, guess what? The government does nothing good. Do you disagree? Well, people have never thought about it like that, but when I say that to a normal person, they're like, well, I guess you're right. They do it better than nothing is what they'll usually say.
Yeah.
Some shit like that.
Nope.
Okay, cool. Anything else you guys would like to say?
Nope.
You want to shout anything out? Anything you got going?
Yeah, if anyone wants to join a nomad caravan in any way, if you have produce or goods that you created that you want to put into an agorist market and trade with people, we have the vans and we are trying to help in any way we can. So
Yeah.
You have like a transportation network for goods?
Well,
That's like legit, like,
well, we haven't got the.
we are that right now, and it's
Okay.
going to grow. And we have lots of interest, and we know more
We
nomadic
want to have like
anarchists.
pop-up locations in towns, but we know that people in those towns are going to be able to help us find the best like marketplace location.
Yeah.
what would be a good name for this delivery? It's like Amagora? Agorazon? It's like the
Amazagora,
Amazon. Amazagora.
We had just called it the Agorist Caravan.
Yeah,
but, the Nomad Agorist Caravan.
I was trying to be punny.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
And, you know, like one of the ideas we had, because there's a lot of people out there who are trying to do their own thing and they don't have a huge network in their area, but they might be able to produce a certain amount of produce or something. So we're investing in some freeze dryers that we're going to bring, and we're going to provide the power and the freeze dryers to help people turn their 2-week shelf life product into a 20-year shelf life product, so that then they can actually get their produce. This is the thing that a lot of people are, whatever people's things are, we're going to try to find ways to help them. But produce seems to be the big thing right now. People are trying to provide for their own food and their own nutrition. Lots of scares of food shortages. So it seems like equipment like freeze dryers, which I think are around $5,000 a piece. It's not cheap equipment. It's not something a lot of people have. That seems to be the tool that I see that would help in this nomad sense, because it reduces the water weight of the product. It makes the product easier to transport for those people if they want us to help us in that way. And it does allow you to produce what you want. We can freeze dry what you have for you, and then you will be able to have more time to sell it. I had done this in the Ozarks. I had grown this a huge garden of tomatoes. I wasn't able to sell all the tomatoes that I was producing. I wished I had a freeze dryer, but I just didn't have the investment. So we figured if we show up at someone's house with a couple freeze dryers, then we can help them out. We can help get them more in connection with this agorist alternate economy.
in their area.
In their area,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's the other part, is that if you're in an area and you're like the only anarchist you know, like we want to come and help you form weekly meetups or help you somehow get into contact with others
Exactly.
and farmers in your area. So it's just a bunch of different, fronts.
And we don't have a website yet, but I mean, you can reach out to me if there's somebody out there that's trying to start their own voluntarist or agorist network, or is interested in the things that we're talking about here with regard to this caravan. Yeah, you can reach me at loveisanarchy@gmail.com.
Gmail.
Yeah.
Gmail, yes.
Gmail.
It's an old one I made a while back,
Scoff.
but and I'll get back to you. I don't go online all that often, but if I get on there and I see someone sends me a message and lets me know what they're about, we can try to work it in, because we're constantly traveling all around the place, so we can schedule a time.
Shout out to me. I'm reselling Proton Mail's service under a voluntarist domain name. So if you want a Proton Mail email,
Yes.
at voluntary.one is the domain name.
All right.
So if you want one of
we'll
those,
definitely do that.
well, let me know. And if you guys want it out there, go check out voluntary.one. It's just me. Don't expect like up to the minute customer service. I'm just trying to help out people that want to use Proton Mail with a better domain name than Proton Mail. So, okay. Well, Chewy, man, it's been years since we hung out at Anarchapulco. You've changed into a totally different lifestyle since then in every imaginable way. And it looks like you're happy as shit. So that makes me happy. It's good to talk to you again. Morgan, it was amazing to meet you.
Thank you.
I'm happy that you're making Chewy happy. And it looks like you're happy as well. And when y'all are happy, I'm happy. So
Yay.
excellent.
Thank
Cool.
you so much. This has been awesome.
Thank you for telling the story. All right, guys. Until next time.